Hello, Diana. Thank you so much for joining, even though it's 4 o'clock in the morning there by you.
It's 1.
1. Oh my goodness, you are dedicated. Thank you.
Well, I've enjoyed the other one, so I figured I would see what you were up to. Because yes, I know I can watch the video, but it's more fun when you participate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for participating. I try shuffle the time slots around a bit so that different people in different parts of the world can get it. But today I was just like, it's a Saturday. I've only got capacity in me to do this in the morning. I don't want to be doing this later today. So
When I worked for Motorola, we did a round the world test because we were splitting part of the company off, and so we had peers in Europe and peers in Asia, and so we were doing round the clock conferences. So you just set your clock. When you're working for a living, you just set your clock and you do what you have to do.
That's wonderful. And I see Evie is joining us again. So yes, hello Evie. Yay. Yay. So where in the world are you, Diana?
I am in Arizona. I'm in just south of Phoenix.
Okay.
I'm in Chandler,
okay.
A little bedroom community for or part of the metropolitan area.
Okay.
We've been here since '94, so we've been here for this is where my kids consider home. It's where they went to high school. So
okay.
We've lived lots of different places.
Okay. And Evie, where are you from?
I'm from Norway.
Oh, lovely.
Well, welcome.
That's lovely.
Thank
So
you.
we've got USA, South Africa, Norway. I see we have Renee joining us. Let's find out where she's from.
We two are in the same time zone.
Oh, lovely.
So it's now 10 a.m. here as well.
Oh, awesome. So it wasn't too difficult for you to...
Oh, no.
Diana has set her alarm and got up at 1 a.m. so that she could be with us. Hello, Renee. And Renee, if you can switch on your audio and just tell us where you're from.
Hi, everyone. That's dedicated. Wow. I'm in Perth and I'm WA, so it's 4 p.m. So that's
lovely.
easy.
Yay. Yay. So we've got a bunch, we've got the whole globe essentially here covered. That's wonderful. So I know we're going to have more people probably joining us, but I also would like to kind of get into the information. So I think I'm going to start by asking the three of you who are here, do you have any questions for me about dyeing fabric in a pot? Evie?
Yes, I have tried it a long time ago.
Okay.
But I think I've forgotten most of what I did then.
Okay.
So the process itself is going to be valuable.
Okay. Okay. So if I just talked you through how I would approach it, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay. So when I am planning on dyeing fabric in a pot, it normally means I want to dye it one color. Tie dyeing you do where you kind of either dip or you put the color on with syringes, but when you put it in a pot, you're dyeing the whole garment one color. And very often the purpose of dyeing fabric in a pot in that way is to get a smooth, even cover of color over the whole garment. And so I'm going to describe that process, how to get a smooth, even color. Now, you can use different heat sources. Somebody asked me the other day, do you have to have a gas bottle? No. Any heat source will do. And the only reason I use a heat source is because I work with a dye that has an optimum temperature of 65 to 70 degrees. Now, the dye stuffs that you use will depend really on what is available to you where you live. In different countries, availability is different. So, for example, a Procyon dye will work at ambient room temperature and does not need that much heat. Your Remazole type dyes, most of your fiber reactive dyes need to be used at 65 to 70 degrees. And then you also get dyes that need to be boiled for them to be color fast. Hello, Gaynor. I've already started explaining, Gaynor, so you can just come in with questions later. So the temperature that you're going to use the dye at will depend on the instructions on the labeling of the product that you bought. Okay, so it's very, very important. A lot of people say to me, but I read this on the internet. And you don't know when you've read something on the internet what chemical exactly they were working with. The person who packaged the dye that you are working with will put the optimum temperature on the packaging. So I always recommend that you scour that instruction on the packaging to find out what temperature that particular company recommends you use. So I'm just aware that I may be getting some noise on my microphone here. So you want to, first of all, look on the product packaging to find out what the optimum temperature is there, and then you want to work with that. So I also recommend that if possible, when you're dyeing fabric in a pot, that you have a thermometer that you can use to check what the temperature is. Because, for example, with a reactive dye like I use that has an optimum temperature of 65 to 70 degrees, overheating it to boiling point can also affect your results. It can change the color and it can affect wash fastness also. It is possible to overheat the dye and actually burn it. So it is quite important that you work at the temperature of the product that you've bought. Now, it's not important so much what heat source you use, okay? Because whether you use a gas bottle or your normal stovetop, electric stovetop, or even an open fire, as long as you create the heat, that's all that matters. And then you want to use that thermometer to then regulate the heat. So if you find that it's getting too hot, you need to turn the heat down in some way. And there obviously a gas bottle or an electric stove is easier to control that than what an open fire would be. Now, I normally would take a big job like that outside. That's why I like to use a gas bottle and not work on my stove at home. And my reasons for that are that those dye powders are very fine. And if there is any air movement whatsoever, they will float around the environment. And a lot of people say to me that they have great results in their kitchen, they're not too worried about it. But you'll find if you actually take a spritzer bottle and you spray a very thin film of water across all the surfaces, you're going to see these little colored drops appear that you're going to go, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Okay, and you might find them traveling right through your house. If you walk in them, you will walk those particles throughout your house. And then it becomes a disaster once you end up with it in your laundry and stuff like that. So just to manage the mess, I normally just take the job outside. I know some people complain then it's very windy, but then I try and get the powders into the liquid as fast as possible. And that just means that when those powders do float around, either they're carried away completely on the wind, or wherever they settle, I can then go back afterwards with a hose pipe and very easily hose the area down to clean it up, so that I can then wash those particles away and into the ground. Rather than have them settle on every single surface in my kitchen, and then for weeks afterwards, I suddenly have these pink spots on my hands and I don't know where they came from. Then it's very important that you use a clean pot. So if you've dyed something navy in the pot and there's like a residue stuck to the pot, then I would scour it off nicely before working with a yellow or something like that. Now, a lot of the purists say that you have to work with a stainless steel pot. and that you can't work with an aluminium pot. I must tell you, I mass-produced thousands and thousands of garments in cheap aluminium pots. Okay, so the only thing I would say about the container that you use is that you should not then use it for food again afterwards. So try to have a dedicated container for dyeing, and don't switch back and forth and then try to cook food in the pot that you've had the dye chemicals in. Because again, you don't know what's in that chemical. From supplier to supplier, it might vary, and there's almost always a residue of something in the pot that you then don't want to get into your food. So a big clean pot, I would normally start by putting the water in and then heating it up. Now, you might get slight variance in your results depending on your water also. Like I say, sometimes water is hard, sometimes it is soft, and that variance can create some variance in your results. That variance, in my personal opinion, is normally quite small, but I've normally worked with water from similar sources. So I've not really had too much experience with water that's kind of on the extreme end of either of those scales. So if your water is known to be very hard or very soft or have a chemical residue in, or to have lots of chlorine in it, it can affect your results. Now, when I say affect your results, it's normally quite a small effect that it has. And I always say start with end use first. So if you're a home dyer and you're experimenting and you're not too attached to the outcome, then it doesn't really matter too much. Don't overthink it. Okay. If you are mass producing and you have customers who have a very tight color matching requirement, who expect you to have a color match, a Pantone color match or something like that, then it would be more important to actually research your water source and try and sort that out. Now, on a lot of the sites that I visit, on a lot of the blogs, they recommend that you add all sorts of extra chemicals to your process to make it work better or to help with dye uptake and stuff like that. Now, when I was mass producing for the fashion industry, my waste was a really, really big concern to me. And I researched so many different ways to try to minimize my environmental impact. And the theory that I cooked up for myself, and it may not be your theory, you may want to work differently, but the theory that I eventually settled on was the following. The more chemical you add to any process, the more chemical you're dumping into the environment. That chemical has to be created in the first place commercially, and then you're putting it into the environment. So I actually stripped down my processes as far as I could to use only the bare minimum of chemicals in what I did. And I actually got fantastic results working that way. Again, too much information can be dangerous. If you go and do lots of reading on the forums, you can read, oh, this chemical helps you with this and that chemical helps you with that. But you may not have the whole story. Maybe that person telling the story is working with a different dye source to what you are, or a different fiber. And if you don't have that whole story, you may have the wrong end of the stick, because now you're looking to add chemicals to your process that don't actually add any value to the particular chemicals you're working with. So there again, if you're doing any research on the internet, I suggest you research properly. So don't just skim information off the top and then go, well, this works and that works, so we're going to put it all together in one process. That can be very dangerous. Then all you end up with is a chemical stew that may not be adding to the efficacy of the process. Those chemicals can even work against each other in the process. So a lot of people will read somewhere that you use vinegar in the process, and now you add that to your dyeing when you're dyeing cotton fibers that need alkaloid mordants, and now suddenly you're adding an acid to the process that's really going to affect your results quite badly, because your dyes for plant fibers want an alkaloid mordant. They want a base mordant. So now you add acid to that process, it's counterproductive to what's needed to actually fix the color to the cloth. So I always recommend read the instructions on the box. Now, I know that can sometimes be very difficult. In South Africa, we've got a brand of dye called Lady Dye, where the instructions are so very tiny, you need glasses and a magnifying glass to read what it says. They're also pretty convoluted in that they tell you quite late in the instructions that you need to add the mordant for better results. And in my personal experience, the mordant is vital to the process. So please, please, please take the time to scour through those instructions and understand them. Even make short notes for yourself that you can read that will help you to reference back to. Because the best instructions for the chemicals that you've got are the ones on the container from the person who actually packed them, because they know what they've put into the mixture. So once I've got everything set up outside, and I would also, whenever I start dyeing, I set everything up properly before I start. That's one of the best pieces of advice I can give, is clear the decks. So clear your time, tell your family to bugger off for the day, switch your phone off. Don't even put it far away, switch it off so that you can be 100% present for what you're doing if you want to get good results. There's nothing more disastrous than walking away and coming back. And as soon as your attention is broken, that's when something normally goes wrong. So I would clear the decks, I would clear my time. I would then set every single thing up that I'm going to need before I start. There's nothing worse than you standing there and you've got gloves on and you've got everything going, and now you need something else, and now you've got to traipse back into the house to go and get it. I also prepare myself personally with the right clothing and gear. I wear 2 pairs of latex gloves on my hands to protect them from the dye. Now, a lot of people will say, why 2 pairs? Because the outer pair normally gets a hole in. And then the dye leaks in and you end up with these blue fingers. So if you've got 2 pairs on, the outer pair can get a hole in and the inner pair still protects you. Some people like to work with thicker rubber gloves. They're not as sensitive in a tactile way as the latex gloves for me. I'm very much a tactile through my fingertips person, and I actually want to feel what I'm doing. So I found that the 2 pairs of latex gloves is my personal solution. I've also found that with the 2 pairs of latex gloves, it actually puts a cushion of air around your hands, so that if I in a dire emergency have to plunge my hand into that pot of hot water, and I don't recommend you do this, and fish something out, I can, because I've got this double layer of air around my hands that then protects me. It protects you from being burned also. So the 2 pairs of gloves I found is actually quite a good secret for that. Then I also wear old clothes, dark colors. I call them my passion killers. So they're normally black baggy things. So that then also, again, if I spill on myself, that hot liquid doesn't end up on me. I made the mistake some years ago where I was working with hot dye outside in summer, and I decided to wear shorts that day because it was so hot. And of course I had a hose pipe. It connected directly to a geyser because it helped me to short circuit the process, so I didn't spend so much time heating up the liquid. It would come hot out of the geyser. And I actually dropped that hose pipe onto my leg and burned blisters. So you actually want to protect your body from head to toe with baggy, old, dark-colored clothes that you can just mess on and spill on, because then you don't have to keep worrying about cleaning yourself up. Again, you can be present in the process fully. And then I also like to work with gumboots on. Protect your feet. You don't know how often you can spill hot liquid on your feet, and that can also be very painful. So I put on gumboots. It's the best way to protect my feet, and also that they stay dry, because if you're going to do a lot of dyeing, then there's nothing worse than spending a day in wet boots. So I would set everything up first, be present in the moment, and then I will start the process. And what I'll very often do is I will almost do like a dry run in my head, where I go, okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do that. And at that point, I normally realize, okay, I forgot something in the house. It means you can quickly run and get that other thing that you need before you start, rather than then standing there with colored liquids dripping all over the place, and now you've got to go fish for something. I normally work close to a hose pipe so that if I need to wash anything off or clean anything off, I can. I normally have a bunch of old towels, dry ones, wet ones, particularly clean ones straight out of the washing machine, so that if I end up with a splash in my eye, I can reach for one of those and very quickly sort out my face. I also work with a face mask on. Now, if you're going to be doing only one project, then even one of those paper masks is fine. If you're going to be doing lots of dyeing, then I suggest you get something that will filter out the powders. Now, you see a lot of people in some of the blogs recommend those big industrial masks with the canisters on either side that then filter the air out properly and all the particles out properly. I have found that I personally don't like them. They're way too claustrophobic. They're very heavy. And if you've got any kind of a neck challenge, they're going to impact on an injury or something like that. I tried working in those for days on end, and they absolutely killed my neck. 3M does a little paper mask that has a filter on the front that's very efficient. And I would get one of those. So they sell them for people who work in industrial situations and who work with solvents and things like that. And if you phone them at 3M or any of those suppliers, your industrial clothing suppliers, and you ask them, you tell them what you're using it for, they'll normally be able to direct you to the correct mask for that. So there again, consider end use first. If you're going to be doing one project, don't overthink it. You can wear a simple paper mask. If you're going to be doing a lot of it, then I recommend that you protect your lungs and you wear the right face gear. So then after doing a dry run like that, I'll then realize, okay, I've got all the things I need. I also like stirring implements, lots of stirring implements, more than one, because sometimes you want to grab it with both hands and stir and push the fabric under and that kind of thing. Now with stirring implements, I actually like to find a spatula or a stainless steel spoon or something like that. I like spatulas a lot because they've got gaps, they've got holes in them that allows the liquid to move through them. And they're just easy to use and easy to manipulate the fabric with. But I tried to find something that has been cast as one unit, one metal unit. I found that if you use a spoon that's got a join in it, then the mordant, the soda ash and the salt that you use to fix the dye tend to get into that little join, and then your spoon doesn't last very long. So the end of the spoon then breaks off where it's been connected to the handle. So if you're going to do a lot of dyeing on a repetitive basis, then try to find yourself a spatula that's been cast as one single unit. Because those last forever. You can use them again and again and again. And just like with the pot, please don't use them for cooking food afterwards. Then I also always have a bucket standing nearby with clean water in, so that I can drop the spatulas into there and take them out again. If I'm going to be changing colors and that kind of thing, then I will have my container standing nearby where I can just drop my utensils in and take them out again. So once I'm absolutely certain that I have everything that I need lined up and waiting ready, and that also includes the fabric that has been washed in the washing machine. It is always, always better to wash fabric in the washing machine before you start. You never know what chemicals the fabric has been coated with in the factory. You never know what's been spilled on it. There might be oils and solvent that's been spilled on it. And an oil or a solvent will draw the dye in a way that it'll make a mark. So if you've got, you might have found somewhere along the line, if you've tried to dye something where somebody spilled food on the front, then where they've spilled the food on the front, there's a darker mark in the dye stuff. The oil actually draws the dye in and gives you a darker mark where it is. So you always want to wash fabric before you dye it if it's important to you to get an even, smooth color. Then you also want lots of space. So what very often happens is if you're trying to dye lots of stuff, you kind of, there's this inclination, I know certainly with me, to cram more stuff in the pot so that I can just get it all done at once. And that is when you get blotching and crushed, crumpled effects. Because just picture it, if the fabric is kind of squashed in like this, gravity always comes along and leaves particles on the upper layers, but then they're not on the inside layers. And so you end up with these textured and crinkled effects if you don't have enough space in the pot. So if it's very important to you that you get a smooth, even color onto something, give it lots of space and stir it all the time. Now, for the best results when dyeing smooth, flat color, I first put the dye in the pot and I stir and I stir and I stir until all the lumps are gone. Then I raise the temperature and I add the fabric. And I stir and I stir and I stir and I stir. This will coat the fabric fibers in color and it'll coat it evenly. And then when I get the temperature to optimum level, I then add the salt and I stir some more. Now your salt gives you the vibrancy. If you leave the salt out, your colors will be more pastel. Then after about 10 minutes of stirring like that, I'll add my mordant, my soda ash. And then I keep stirring. Now for an even smooth color, I will stir that pot continuously for anything from half an hour to a full hour to get good results. Now I know a lot of people just want to throw it in and walk away. It's like a lot of PT to actually stand there and stir like that. But if it is important to you to get a smooth, even color, then that is the best way to do it. You want to keep it moving. Just picture it, if your fabric is lying still, then gravity has a chance to actually deposit color on the top layers and not necessarily on the underneath layers. And then that's how you get this crackled effect. Okay, and then when the fabric comes out of the dye, you need to either hang it flat, lay it flat on the ground, or hang it on the wash line along the edge, okay, or straight into a washing machine and wash straight away. If you fold the fabric over the wash line, very often what happens is that you get a stripe across your fabric. Now that's got to do with the fact that there might still be dye stuff in there that is active and that can still respond to the heat of the sun and other factors, and that might then fix on that line. I've even seen fabrics that I've dyed on a heater before, or that I've dried on a heater before, that have made very distinctive patterns from the fins of the heater because it got heat in different ways. So if you want the color to dry flat and smooth, then the fabric needs to be flat and smooth in its drying conditions. Now, whether that's hanging on the line from the edge or whether that's laid flat somewhere on the grass or on a table or something like that, I recommend actually the wash line, but along the very, very edge. And even there, be careful with your pegs and things like that. So it's not ideal for garments. You might still get a variance under the arms and places like that. And the pegs sometimes leave marks too. So what I will sometimes do is, if it's very important to me that there are no marks on the fabric once in the drying process, then I'll dye the fabric very, very thoroughly and then put it straight into the washing machine to launder out any excess dye that might still be there that could then do funny things. Okay, do you have any questions? Evie, did that help?
Yes, that was great walkthrough.
Okay.
Since I haven't done this for a very long time, so this lots of useful tips.
Awesome, awesome. Any other questions in the group? I've given you lots to think about. Gaynor?
Right, hi. Right, I might have missed something, but it might be an obvious question, but I'm a real novice at this now.
Yes.
Is it like, the easiest fabrics to dye? Is that cotton? Would you
Yes.
say that's the easiest? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
100% cotton. Okay.
Yes. Yes. If it's a poly cotton blend, very good chance it's going to come out pastel colored. And again, match your fiber to the instruction on the box. So yes, cotton is the easiest to dye, but if you've got a dye that says it works on something else, then you've got to work on the fiber that matches the instruction on the box. Okay.
And is
But
there anything that you would say that is completely very, very difficult to dye and you wouldn't even attempt it?
polyester. Don't
All
touch
right, okay.
polyester. Polyester is a nightmare. And that's because it's plastic. They normally color polyester when it's still in the mush state before they spin it into fiber. When they put all the chemical stew in the container, that's normally when they add the color to polyester. Adding color to polyester after it's been made is like trying to dye a plastic bag. The other thing to say is you could have asked me what is a very easy fabric to dye. The easiest fabric in the world to dye is silk. Okay. Silk loves color. Okay. And it takes it up quickly. The hardest thing about dyeing silk is making peace with the price if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, because silk is very expensive. But silk also dries very quickly. So it's one of my absolute favorite fibers to dye. Now, I see that Zoom has just told me that it's going to cut us off shortly. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I hope that was useful for you. And shall we all say goodbye?
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining me.
Bye.
Bye.
I found it.
Oh, that's beautiful, Diana. That's
It's in
stunning.
in my mother-in-law's stash. It just happened to be something I stumbled across, and I was showing it to a friend yesterday. So I
Okay.
realized as we were doing the call, going, oh yeah, I have a sample here.
That's so beautiful. That's
It
gorgeous.
is. It is gorgeous.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's lovely. Thank you for showing us. And if you want to take a picture, maybe put it in the comments.
I will. I will.
Okay. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for getting up in the middle of the night. It was really meaningful to me that you joined me in that way.
You're welcome, my love. I would mention that when I've done the Proscian dyes, I put the colored stuff into an individual water bottle.
Yes.
Because then I can take the mask off. I'm not fooling with the
Yes.
powdered stuff.
Yes.
And then I can use it like a mixer.
Yes, that's a great solution. That's a great
Yes.
solution. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Have a beautiful rest of your sleep.
I'm going back to bed.
Okay.